Okay, and I see the chat now. I'm gonna put some music in the background. And you guys can... Cool. And I'm going to ask. Oh, okay. See, people popping in. Hello, everybody. It's on the title right now. Could wait for people to pop in. Oh yeah, I'm gonna post the link on my Twitter. Dang, you guys are fast. Okay, cool. I just put some lo-fi in the back. We can turn it off. Hello, everybody. All right. Cool. Okay, let me put this down and let's show our faces. Or give me 1 second. Let me pull up this. Okay. All right. Here we are. Hello, everybody. We're live. Oh, yeah, just it'll drive you crazy. Yeah. There we are. I know, just like cute cartoony us and then our fleshy forms. Wow, nice. Oh, it says... Oh, it says I cannot hear Pedro or Jean. Uh-oh. Alright. They're muted. Oh, okay. Give me 1 second. We're gonna go back here. Can you speak so I can test out? Let's see. Okay. Worst case, We can go on Discord. I'm not sure why the Zoom isn't being picked up. Doo-doo. Sorry if everyone, we're still figuring it out. I'm still here. I'm just like panicking. I don't know. Let's see. Let me just change that to default. Oh wait, here we go. Turn it up to default. Oops. Oh, you know what? Let me just add this. No, nobody's muted. Just get my desktop audio up. It's definitely Zoom. Zoom is giving me issues.
Maybe have them speak? I'm not sure if they're speaking.
Drew's helping me. Yeah, I don't know.
To try to hear, to see if it's coming through at all.
Let me see. Yeah, I can hear you guys fine. I don't know why it's not coming through the stream. Let me try. I'm going to play you through my speakers. We heard. Can you all hear Pedro?
I think it was me.
Oh, it might have been Drew. Can. Oh no, it was Drew. Okay, let me do what I was gonna do then. It's the delay, Okay. That was my partner? Okay.
Roya says you can set it up so that all desktop audio.
I am gonna play y'all through my speakers. Ready? Alright, so speak.
Alright. Hello.
Check. Hello.
Can you guys hear? I can't hear Pedro now. Oh dear. Oh, never mind, it was background dude.
Background dude.
I think
switch to the Discord as quickly as possible.
I put you all on my speaker. The chat
Okay.
can tell me if it sounds like
It's super low. If there's a way to turn that up, maybe?
right now I have the mic just to the Discord or just to my speaker, but we could really quick switch to Discord.
I can't hear them. Yeah, I turned on Gene. I turned on the audio on the YouTube, and I can hear you pretty fine.
Okay.
Here, wait.
I think it's just quiet and muffly.
They say it's not perfect, but it works.
It's mega clear. This is every time I stream, it's like back and forth.
All right.
Sounds a bit echoey. Well, it's literally my mic to the to the speaker as a last minute
so
solution.
jury-rigged. I think your other microphone was better, Pedro. I think this one. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna switch.
Super duper clear. You
Super
can
duper clear.
understand.
Okay, this sounds like a thumbs up.
All right.
We're doing the best we can.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. We tried it yesterday and it worked fine, of course. And
Yes. We are gonna get started. All right. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Good job, Katie. Everyone give Katie a hand.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Woo! All right. Katie, so do you want to do the honors?
Yes. Okay. So let me make myself big on the screen. There we go. Hi, everyone. So welcome to Pitch Talk. We have Pedro here, who is the creator of Cupcake and Dino, as well as Ollie's Pack and Oswaldo. And we have Gene Goldstein here as well, who is the creator of Planet Panic, here to talk with us too. And my name is Katie Graziano, and I've worked on Thundercats Roar, The Mighty Ones, and Jellystone, and I'll be moderating and helping forward as many questions as I can to Pedro and Gene and myself in the stream. So to start us off, why don't we talk about how we first started out in animation? So Pedro, you want to start us off?
Hey everybody. My name is Pedro, I believe. I'm from Brazil, and I've worked in animation for the past 13 years. Yes, 13
Just keeps
years.
going up.
Yeah. And so I used to, a quick short story. Used to worked in advertising for 5 years as a copywriter. Got tired of that. When I was 26, I went to Vancouver Film School and studied classic animation there for a year. Went back to Brazil and went to São Paulo, worked at a studio called Birdo, which when I started there, we were like 5 people, and I did everything from like, character design to animation to storyboarding and all that stuff. We did very small projects, and I got a chance to create a show in Brazil called Oswaldo, or Osvaldo, and so I worked on the first season of that show. Then I got a chance to do a show which was a Canadian-Brazilian co-production called Cupcake and Dino General Services on Netflix right now. So did 2 seasons of that, and then I worked as an executive producer on a show I co-created called Ollie's Pack for Nickelodeon and Nelvana. And after that, I moved to LA, and I worked a year and a half for Disney TVA in the development department, developing new shows for them. And with my creative partner, and my creative husband, Mark, and Mark Satterthwaite, and we're still developing shows with them. We're developing an adult show. We're developing another kids show for another network. So we've been working on developing a bunch of stuff that I can't talk about. So it's been a lot of that. There's not a lot to show in the last couple of years, but I've been keeping busy, even though it doesn't look like it. So yeah, I kind of talked to Gene and Katie about doing this because I wanted to just talk about, pitching shows and making pitches. I've made I don't know, 24 pitches in my life. Between my pitches and Mark's pitches, we sold between 12 and 13 pitches, and got to do 4 of those shows because There's
Yeah.
also a preschool show called Bada Bing that's being done in Brazil that I co-created, but I did not work on. So it's been a good learning experience. Yeah, Gene, go ahead.
Hello. My name is Gene Goldstein. I've been working in animation for, depends when you start counting, but since I was like 12, so it's been 20 years. And I started doing Flash animation. I made a cartoon called Hyperboy back in the day. And then I had my heart set on having a show since I was little, and so I've always been kind of pursuing that dream. And I worked in video games for a bit. I've pitched tons of stuff. And it wasn't until 2014, I think, that I started doing a webcomic for an idea I had called Planet Panic. It was like an animated webcomic. And that caught the eye of the head of development at Nickelodeon, named Phil Rinda, who's a legend in his own right. And he invited me to pitch to Nickelodeon. And it took 3 tries before it finally landed as a short. And so I made a short for a couple years. It finally came out in 2018. Did really well, did phenomenally well. And then I've been, I went through development Nickelodeon for a couple of years, just trying to get it into development, and then finally went through the whole thing. And they unfortunately passed on it in April. However, there's been good developments for that. I can't talk about it yet, but it's still very much alive and still has a chance at hitting your computers and TVs. But for now, that's where it's at. And so I don't have the same sheer quantity that Pedro has, but I've gone through that gauntlet and learned a lot along the way. And so I offered my help and sort of my perspective on the whole thing, because it is different. I think it's we have sort of slightly different paths, and so people hopefully will get something from both of us talking about it.
Nice, very cool. It's interesting, just like I don't know, the different paths and experiences so far with your stories, like coming into animation. I came from Philadelphia and moved to LA like 4 years ago, and started on Thundercats Roar, and have been like, I feel like I just like started delving into pitching. I pitched like a couple things to DreamWorks TV and stuff, so this is going to be informative for me as well as everybody else, because I feel like I'm just like dipping my toes. And especially I started pitching for the pandemic, so it's all been like online pitching, not so much like in-person meetings. So yeah.
Well, that's the benefit right now, I think, is that like if you don't live, I see some people are asking about that, like, they're not in LA. Doesn't really matter. And I used to send in pitches that were when I was not living in LA. It doesn't really matter. And now is the best time because everyone's pitching stuff remotely anyway. So like now's the time, and definitely take advantage of a bad situation with all of us stuck at home and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
hey, if I can pitch stuff from Brazil, pitching stuff from a different state in the US doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah.
So,
no excuses. Make it happen.
And Katie, I can't believe Thundercats Roar was your first gig. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, I started off storyboarding, which was very scary, because usually like you do revisions and maybe like bump up to story, but I kind of like just started with that, and yeah, I got through in an interesting way where I was friends with the showrunner through D&D when I first moved out to LA, so I was like job hunting for like 2 years, and then Thundercats Roar got picked up, and I tested for it, and yeah, it worked out. But it was definitely just like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing, but
yeah,
adjusting quickly.
That's how it is.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
No, yeah, for every first job is terrible.
Hey.
Pedro, do you want to kind of kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. So, we're going to talk about pitching animated projects. I'll put an asterisk here and say, like, this is all coming from, our particular experiences. So my particular experience, and I guess Gene as well, is pitching animated comedies. So there's very particular a set of rules for those. I think of course you can figure out what you can and you can use for your own projects. So it might seem like we're pooping a bunch of rules here, but take what works for you. Don't take what doesn't work for you. Adapt to whatever you're doing, to wherever if you're doing a different medium, if you're doing a feature, if you're doing like a comic book project. I think some of the stuff here might be useful for everybody. But if you feel like something doesn't work for you, just do your. There's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. Even though like I'll be like, oh, this is how I do this, and this is how I do that. But there really isn't one way to do it. Like people pitch in wildly different ways. So I guess I could get started by kind of going through. Like I put together a little fake pitch because the ones that I'm doing right now. I can't share with anybody, and the older ones that I have, like I could show like the Talkin Dino pitch, which I posted on Twitter before, but that pitch is already like 6 years old, and I think I've learned some different things since then. So I put together a very simple, very quick, black and white fake pitch. So I'm gonna share my screen with you guys, and I'm gonna talk. I'm going to keep talking. I don't know. Feel free to interrupt me anytime.
Okay, cool.
All right. So.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we're already getting like a swarm of questions.
We're getting tons of questions. We can come back to them later because they're all good questions.
Yeah. So we're going to go through this and then we'll
maybe hold off for now.
Get to your questions.
Katie, have you been maybe copy and pasting some of them we can get later? I don't know.
That's a good idea. I will do that now. Let's see.
All right, so this is how I currently go about doing an animated pitch.
Sold.
So this is for the kind of the kind of they call the leave behind, which is the written version of the pitch. So it's not a pitch I would be presenting live to an executive, but it would be kind of a like a PDF document that I would leave. So they could, like send it to their boss and their boss's boss and their boss's boss's boss. And they could talk about it for 6 months until they gave me an answer. So, all right, starting with the cover, of course. What I want to say here is that, right away you want to set the tone for your pitch. Let's say that you're doing, like I usually do, an animated comedy. You want your pitch to be funny. If you're doing like a mystery, you want your pitch to feel mysterious. If you're doing an action show, you want your pitch to feel exciting. Keep in mind that this is the only like real representation of your show that currently exists. So, you don't have an episode to show. You don't have, sometimes you don't have a script to show. So try to make your pitch feel as much like the show as possible. So for Cupcake and Dino, when we did the pitch, I put a bunch of like pictures mixed with the drawings and stuff to kind of really convey that kind of anarchic visual that we wanted for the show. So yeah, make sure you're setting the tone right away. Do a log line for your pitch. Some people like log lines that kind of describe the show as much as possible. Some people feel like log lines are a little bit more like almost like a tagline on like an advertising or something, just to kind of entice them. But make sure it represents your show. Sorry?
I see it as like the thing you read on a Netflix selection screen. It's like the thing that's supposed to get you interested.
Yeah. So like if your character has a very simple conflict, try to maybe convey that in the log line right away. Like what's the main conceit of your show? So for here, the fake show I've made is called Super Normal Working Turtle. Nickelodeon, call me.
Love it.
And the log line is, some turtles want to be ninjas, others just dream of working retail. So you know right away that this is like a character whose dreams are very mundane. I'm not going to say, this is not a great show, guys. This is just an example.
Yes.
If it was a great show, I would be showing not on YouTube.
Pedro, can I interrupt you and ask, because I feel like would you say a log line is pretty important for a pitch to kind of like get the basis of the pitch just like out there and in the open, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've done pitches that in the past, like before I kind of, because this is a lot of me and Mark's habit with like discussing about pitches and learning from other people. I used to do pitches that didn't even have log lines in the beginning, but now it's something that me and Mark spend a lot of time kind of making sure it kind of represents the show, because what happens a lot of times, like since we left Disney, we've been pitching a couple of shows. I've been pitching this adult show where like they asked us for a 1-page. So the 1-page was just like a sizzle of the show before we had the meeting. So it was just like kind of the cover image and a log line. So we spent quite some time trying to craft that log line, because it would be the first thing they would see, and we would only talk to them like a week later. So we wanted to make sure that they're like, okay, we're interested in this. We're going to get some people into this meeting. And so, I would say it's a nice exercise to kind of boil down your show into 1 or 2 sentences. I think it kind of allows you to learn things about your show, maybe, of like, what is the most important thing on my show? Yeah. Because sometimes if you want to make a show about too many things, it can come off as like confusing, I think.
Yeah, I think a log line is it's less, sometimes it's less for the executives or whoever you're pitching to and more for you, because like I think every successful show has a really quick way of describing it. Like, and they also say it's an elevator pitch, where it's like you run into some executive in an elevator and you have to explain your concept in 10 seconds. And not every show can be summarized like that, but it helps to figure out what it's about. And the simpler core idea that you can come up with, the easier it'll be to kind of build it up from there. But if it's messy at the start and you're having a hard time trimming it back down to just like a sentence or two, that's a problem. That you're going to deal with that later on, most likely. And then it'll be harder to kind of scale back and trim stuff because you'll be so used to it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, like, especially now with streaming services and there's so many shows, I think people want to like know what's the quickest way to summarize your show. It's become a very important skill, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, moving on to, open up, very simple. First couple of pages is the show. Like, what is it? This is like an extension of the log line. So you're basically taking the log line and you're distilling it. Instead of a couple of sentences, you're doing like, 3 paragraphs or so. So what is it? Is it comedy? Is it adventure? And for me, the most important thing is like, what's the basic engine of the show? And I personally, am very focused on, and I firmly believe in character-based shows. I think that's kind of a discussion that not everyone agrees with, but I think most executives agree with me. So I'm gonna say that
Oh, definitely. I've pitched before, and one of like the critiques I've gotten, or just like notes, is just like, we want characters that kids would want to be like or hang out with, like really make these characters just like fully well-rounded, and just like maybe like a kid someone would know, just like that type of personality, or someone a kid would want to hang out with, like on the playground or something.
That's interesting. Yeah, if I could chime in with that, I think that this is something that it took me a long time to learn about, and it's super important because like I have a bad habit, or maybe had a bad habit. I'm trying to break out of it, but building out a lot of lore, a lot of world building stuff, a lot of detail. Everyone, watches anime or Avatar or whatever, and they love all the rules and they love all the magic systems and blah, blah, blah. And so you come up with all this shit. Sorry, I won't curse. And you come up with all this stuff, and then you end up, a lot of these, I've seen people's pitches, and this happens a lot, where then there's no room for actual character. And even if you might not feel it when you're watching things or reading things that you enjoy, you would not care about those if it weren't for the characters. It's just the character stuff is the hardest part. And but even going back to the logline thing, it's like you almost have to figure out what the engine is within the logline itself. And it has to be character focused. It has to be about conflict between characters. And if you can boil it down to just 2 or 3 characters and explain what it's about through their eyes, that'll help you figure out the rest of the show, in my experience.
Yes. I think, like, with the show description in the opener, I mean, I always like to think that the first sentence of the description of the show is, this show is about so-and-so, like, or, this character, these characters. It's not about a place. It's not about a spell. It's not about, like a world. It's about characters. Because at the end of the day, the characters are, the elements that you are going to attach yourself to and you're going to relate to, and they're going to walk you through this world. So I say, like, no matter if you're doing a high fantasy show, whatever, start with character, start with their conflicts and how one character, interacts with the other one, and how they create conflict and how they create attraction between each other. And, because, if you're watching Star Wars is about this, dust farmer who becomes a hero. It's not about, the planets. It's not just about the Empire and the rebels. It's about how we perceive this world through these characters' eyes.
Okay.
And that's why you care about Star Wars and you don't care about, like, Aragon. It was a movie that was like exactly like Star Wars, but with dragons. Because you don't have strong characters to latch onto. So when describing the show, just remember, focus on character. What's the engine, and the engine needs to be within the character. Like, I know that an example that executives love is, like, SpongeBob is always like the go-to example to, like, a kind of a strong character-driven show, and they always say, like, yeah, I want, if you put SpongeBob, in a dentist waiting room, you can imagine an episode about that, because SpongeBob is such a strong character, and and not every show needs to be SpongeBob, but it is a way to think of your show. Like, how can I create a character that's so interesting and so complex and has so much happening that I can, put him in different situations and you still be interested in watching this character. So, so that's why I, like, after the show part, I go straight into character. Like after you describe the show, who are your main characters? And, what are their wants? What are their needs? What do they dream of? And then make sure, I'm talking about, like, a pitch, with art in it. So make sure that the art, like, really reflects the personality of that character. I've seen more than one pitch where people do just, like, the turnaround with the character just standing there. And it's like, no. The turnaround is if your show gets picked up, someone will do the turnaround. It's production art. They need to do it. But it's not, it's for production. It's not for a pitch. In a pitch, you want your character as expressive as possible. Like, if it's a shy character, make the character in, shy poses. If it's an explosive character, give them explosive poses. Like, make sure you're really conveying who this character is. So yeah, start with character. What do they want? Be very clear. Like, if it's not there, like, I've submitted pitches to, like Disney when I was working there with Mark, and it wasn't super clear what the character wanted. Is the first question they're going to get. Like, what do they want? Like, it's, and by they I mean the executives. And the executives are your friends and are your enemies, okay?
They are. They want you to succeed, despite what people. If I could chime in, I think keep everything as short as possible. Like, if you don't have a paragraph, have 3 sentences. Like, the more information you can convey about the characters with less text, the better. And I mean, executives they see so many pitches a day, and a lot of it's going to be the same kind of stuff. And so it's hard enough to stand out, but if you're giving people huge blocks of text to read, it's going to be really hard for them to engage with what you're pitching them. And so, like, trim. Like, make it so succinct, make it really short and to the point. Try to use language that is really like evoking specific things about the character, a lot of stuff. Maybe you might go into it, but like I have learned to treat every character as a contrast to another character, and like that's where you sort of get the conflicts. The conflicts come a little easier if you figure out how each character is contrasting with each other. And that way you get these nice like polar opposites, and it's easier to write for that when every character is representing a different viewpoint. And so that's something to try to keep in mind when you're and again, going back to Star Wars, it's like Luke. Luke is a farm boy. He's like a goody two shoes who has this huge task that he has to do. Han Solo is just like this bastard, like snarky like asshole. Princess Leia is very like noble, but she has like so. There's all these like contrasts, and you put those characters together in different configurations, and you'll get interesting dialogue. So that's something I think to keep in mind when you're establishing characters in the pitch bubble.
Yeah, and being succinct is also important because executives, they look at hundreds of pitches. Like if you give them like a 50-page document of just text,
Oh, yeah.
they're not going to read it.
They're not going to read it.
So it's like when you're doing a demo reel, like you want your best stuff in the first 10 seconds of your demo reel.
Yeah.
Because the recruiter is watching hundreds of demos. Same thing with the pitch. Like if you're to the point and short and creative and evocative, you get a much better chance, because sometimes they'll give your pitch like 2 minutes on their desk.
Yeah. Somebody asked, we'll get to all the questions, or try to get to all of them. Somebody asked if we recommend fewer words, even a leave behind. I would. I think that it doesn't matter. I think just if you think it's short enough, go shorter. Like it doesn't matter. Always go shorter. And like you mentioned, a one sheet, and a one sheet is literally just characters and then a small description of what the characters are, and that might be enough. That should be enough, maybe. And
a leave behind, like of course, be very succinct on the leave behind as well. But if you're doing like an actual presentation, I don't even have words. I just I'll have like the name of the character and no text, because you want people to look at the pictures, but you want them to listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of text when you're doing like a live presentation, people will be reading the text and not listening to you.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do if you want to make a really boring presentation is you write on the screen exactly what you're saying. Because that people can read faster than you if they're just reading in their heads, they can read faster than you can say it. So people who have read it while you're still saying it, and it's just so boring. It's a killer. So if you're doing a live presentation, just know your material really well, know your show, back and forth, upside down, and know everything about it, and just be the expert in the room about your show. Just know your show enough that you're so comfortable talking about it that it just sounds like a conversation that you're telling about, you're telling them about your friends or your life or things that happened the other day, and just have a ton of drawings and no words.
Yeah, more pics, less text. Somebody said that's true.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right, so after you met Turtle, super normal working Turtle, this is a one protagonist non-show, but if you had a multiple protagonists, you'd have them here. Then I go for secondary characters and just keep them super, like one paragraph for each. And the thing about secondary characters and this kind of show that I'm talking about is like Gene said, they exist to serve the main character. So like in my head for this fake show, let's say April, she's the stockroom bunny, and she is like super determined and professional, but she's like super high energy. So she serves. Her function is to push Turtle towards like being like more high wired, like, oh, I gotta win. She's just super competitive. So, and Dorf, the security guy, he's like super scaredy cat. He's super cautious. So his purpose is to push Turtle more towards like, being super cautious and kind of, more inward facing and that. So every character you do not create these characters in a vacuum. You create them to serve the main character. They need to create friction and create conflict. So same thing with, so moving on to the final. So after this, what I usually,
Schlep, please. I'm begging you to talk about Schlep.
I
Let's
know, I
talk
love
about-
schlep too.
Manager Schlapp is a hard ass.
Okay. Not
he
Shrek.
No, he's gonna keep Turtle walking on eggshells.
There's like a
that's-
little like crease on the side of
Yeah,
your
what is
head where like an ear should be or was
got
removed.
Yeah, because I didn't remember.
Funny. This is a pitch.
I didn't remember if Shrek had ears or just the antenna, so I just put like a little dip.
Oh man, this is. I would pick this up.
I know, me too.
Hey, if there's any Nickelodeon executives
Yeah.
for this, give me a call.
That's really good.
And then, one thing I started doing more recently with Mark is doing like comparative charts for,
Ooh.
if you have two protagonists, your two protagonists, or like your protagonist and your two main secondary characters, and just kind of contrasting them in a very simple way. And this part is like, takes a lot of time to do because you're trying to be so concise with these. But it just gives you such a clear picture of the show and how conflict is going to be created, how their worldviews are going to clash.
Mhm.
So I try to come up with, something like here, Turtle. He's the kind of guy who enjoys the ride. April, she's the kind of person who the end justifies the means. So you can see that clash. So trying to take the same thing and just kind of how are they different in that worldview. So for Turtle, working is a calling. For April, working is a competition. For Turtle, he's all hearts. He's hearts before brains. April is adrenaline before brains. So like you can see an episode where she wants to do the world's tallest stack of cans in the world because she's competitive, and the store next door is doing one, and she wants the rush of it, and Turtle doesn't want to do it, but he ends up being forced to do it or something. So it starts to really like make your characters super clear.
That's a really good idea. I want to mention too that you mentioned wants and needs earlier, and I want to double down on that because I think that's super duper important. And it's not something that people often think about. I kind of forget to think about it too, but it's good to a friend of mine, I don't know if he'll be comfortable saying who it was, but a friend of mine had a really awesome pitch that I saw once, and he had a sort of chart like this where it was like what they think they want, what they really want, or what they need. And then I think there's a third thing, but even those two were great because it's like everybody has a goal that they have in life, and your characters should too. They should have a goal. It doesn't have to be something really specific, but they should be working towards something, or at least or some kind of fulfillment. But to make it more interesting, if you add what they need, that adds another layer to it, which is like what would actually fulfill them, not what they're looking for. And you don't even have to really talk about that in the show, but keeping it in the back of your mind when you're developing these characters will help so much. Like it really it informs all their choices and just makes them more fleshed out.
That really helps coming up with episode ideas. If you have that super clear, like on Cupcake and Dino, we knew that Cupcake, he wants to be like the best in town at general services. But what he really needs is like connect with people and make sure his brother's okay. So there's always that, like there's something he really wants, it goes wrong, then he finds out what he really needs and uses that to solve that situation. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like, that was like our go-to formula for like a Cupcake episode of Cupcake and Dino. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the story circle idea, which is like a kind of a classic storytelling thing, which is, Star Wars, like the hero's journey. It's really well summarized on by Dan Harmon. If you guys Google Story Circle Dan Harmon, there's a few pages that he wrote, I think for Channel 101, in which he talks about his breaking down of the Story Circle. And it's like 5 pages long, and it's the best thing I've ever read about the hero's journey and the Story Circle because it's so concise and it's so to the point, and it's how how they wrote like every episode of Community or something. So it's like the hero goes off on a quest for what he wants. The hero gets what they want, but then the hero finds out that what they want is not what they need. So they finally get what they need, and they return home a changed person. That's basically it.
Yeah, I used to have this stigma about like rules and writing, and I think that stuff is tried and true for a reason. There's a reason why people keep coming back to these quote unquote formulas, and it's because they work. And you can break them, but you can break them when you've established some kind of foundation. So like when you're just trying to explain new ideas to people, you want to try to eliminate the confusion as much as you can. So reducing it down to really simple stuff like that is the best way to explain your idea. And this might be a good time to sort of mention this thing that somebody told me once, is that when you're pitching, you're only pitching the pitch. You're not pitching the show. And I think that that's something that, like, I've definitely made the mistake. I think a lot of people make the mistake of pitching an entire thing when they're pitching the show to executives. That's too much information. And so you're just trying to get to the next step. That's all you're trying to do. So you want the most base information. You want to keep to those structures, to those story circles, to these things that Pedro's describing. Like these are tried and true methods because they're familiar, and you can slot in your unique ideas in them, but they will actually stand out as more unique if you're fitting them within these parameters. That'll really help. And then if you are lucky enough to pitch and get into development, then they'll ask you, elaborate on this more. Then you can talk about the lore. Then you can talk about the world. And then when you get the show, you can kind of ditch everything you said and just make a show the way you want it. Because like by that point, nobody's paying attention. That's half true. They do still pay attention to the show because they're giving you a lot of money. But I focus on the task at hand. Don't present an entire 3 seasons. Just focus on characters and conflicts and things like that.
And these parameters are like, of course they're not like hard rules, and they're loose enough that they actually fit quite many stories into it. But also, like I said, knowing the only way to know if you're breaking these parameters knowingly is to know the parameters. So like be aware of like, okay, I want to do something that, kind of breaks this paradigm in a certain way, but you got to know the paradigm first, or else you don't even know what you're just like fumbling in the dark.
It's like anything. You gotta learn, it's like sports. You gotta learn the rules before you can do cool things within that. But yeah.
Yeah, you got to play the scales before you do like atonal music in your piano. So yeah, moving on after that, we talk about the world. That's how not important I think the world is. It is important, but it just comes after all the character stuff. And
I have a contrasting view of this, but I'll talk about it after you.
Because again, I think the world serves the characters. Like if you are if you're talking about some part of the world that your main character isn't even in and doesn't interact with your main character, that's too much. You're just like that's too much. That's like you're already doing the spin-off show for your show. Like the world needs to serve the character. The world needs to, either reflect or contrast your character's worldviews in some way. So everything you do needs to, like, if you're creating this like 1,000-year war and the sacred stone was shattered in 5 pieces and scattered across the universe and blah blah blah, but none of this has anything to do with your main character, there's no story. There's just lore. So there's no tale for you to tell with your character. So here comes the world of the show. And of course, if you're doing like a non-serialized character comedy, the world is usually kind of simple and funny and just like lively and exciting for you to watch. then you can like, if you're doing a show with an arc, or that's something that's quite new to me, doing shows with arcs. I started doing like just in the kind of last couple of years. That's where me and Mark usually put it, where it can be the season arc if you want, it can be the series arc. Usually, if you find like a good season arc, it's better than having like this is my 5-season arc for my show. And it's like, I don't know if we're gonna get there, but if you have a really strong like season arc and maybe like a teaser for season 2 of how the show is different, if that's the kind of show you're doing, I think that's probably good enough.
If I could chime in, like,
Yeah.
Because I was going to mention about the world thing too. I think what you're saying is totally right. I think it depends sort of, and you mentioned it, like it depends on the show you're pitching. In my case, I mean, granted, the name of Planet Panic was or is the name of the location, so I had to address it. But in a lot of my pitches, I like to lead with the world. I keep it super short and I keep it really succinct. And I almost kind of fold it into the synopsis too. Like I'll try to explain what are the stakes, but I like to write stuff with an arc. And I like to have a larger goal that the story is moving towards. And for me, it's hard to do that without addressing where the character's existing. Because, and that's just, that's just how I write. But I suspect a lot of people might feel the same way, where it's like, I want these characters to exist. It's like, again, Avatar. Avatar as a character, Aang is like kind of a flat line. It's like a kid who's like excitable and doesn't know what he's doing. But it's the importance of Aang is within this world. And so if you keep it really short, and you could summarize that whole thing to just like a world at war, ancient warrior wakes up after this many years, but it's a kid, and like that's it. And there's they do it in the theme song. They explain it in the theme song within like 2 lines, and you get it. And so when I say it could be okay to establish the world up front, it has to be that short and that simple to understand. But it's just a different opinion, as far as that goes. I think it could kind of depend on what kind of show you're hoping to tell or explain.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's just, there's no one right way to go about it. If I was working on something that had like a really strong focus on the world building, and I maybe say like this is a world where this happens, and this character is is his conflict in this world is this. So like almost like you said, the world is leading into the character. So if there's something fundamental that you need to understand about the world, I think, to understand what the character conflict is, I guess.
I treat the world as a character itself. Like that's how I think of it. In my ideas is I think of the world as a character, and what is the flaw of that character that the protagonist is trying to correct. And that way there is a conflict that the main character has with the world itself, and so you get some story from that as well. But I think it also depends. There's an idea, and I'm sure you know about this. It's like, what is it, like character driven versus what's the other one?
High concept.
High concept. Well, there's another one where it's like, are the characters reacting to events, or are all the stories driven by character choices? And reacting to events is usually more action driven, and it's more like these characters are just going about their day and something happens, oh no, and then they have to deal with it, and then you get conflict. Or there's like a character driven show where it's always the characters making choices that then lead to stories, and those are 2 different kinds of shows. And I think it just also helps to know for a pitch which way you're leaning. Because they're 2 different things. A lot of action shows, it's more reactive, whereas comedy stuff is more active, characters making choices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that even like, because I've heard a couple of times executives being like, this is too reactive, like let's not, we don't want it. Like, so yeah. I think that even when something happens to the character, I think there's a point when the character, there's an obstacle that's internal for the character to overcome, so he can take control of that situation that is happening to him. Like something like The Matrix, for example. It's like, you have, Mr. Anderson just going about his life, but he feels like he doesn't belong. He feels there's something that it's off. Mr. Anderson, right? Is the
you got it right.
Neo's name? Yeah.
Anderson.
And so something happens to him, which it's finding out about this whole thing, but he still has to some internal conflicts that he needs to overcome and prove himself and believe in himself to kind of get to where he needs to be.
You're right.
He needs to believe that he can be the chosen one because he doesn't believe in himself.
I think a safe bet is usually to go with an active character and not depend on outside circumstances to drive the story, for sure, especially in a pitch, I think. But yeah, I think the stuff I mentioned is usually also very like, toyetic shows where it's all about like, what's the play set, what's the action figure that they're going to want to sell. I'm thinking of like Ben 10. Like Ben 10 is a very reactive show. And that's just how they write it. It's always, what's Ben 10 dealing with this week? But anyway.
Yeah, but I know close enough into Ben 10, but it doesn't he have like any is Ben 10 like a conflict free kid?
Yeah.
He's just kind of fun guy.
Yeah, he's just a kid. He's just a kid who's just like a little brash or arrogant at times. That's about it. All
right.
But it's like, which alien are they fighting this week? So that's the difference.
Yeah, because I thought I was thinking of something different. I think you're talking more like an inciting incident on a story rather than. But I guess those shows are very much like, I'm a bad guy who just kind of showed up out of nowhere.
Pretty much. I mean, even like, Ninja Turtles, that is totally not this pitch that you're giving us, is like that, where it's like, but those are all older shows too. I don't know how frequently that happens anymore. I think executives really like to see character-driven stuff now, and less of that like reactive, because there's so many IPs that everyone's already mining. That might be like characters reacting to things. So if you're pitching something new, I would definitely follow Pedro's advice and just focus more on characters and what are their conflicts and what are they sort of what problems are they causing for themselves with their personality flaws.
But Ninja Turtles, I can see fitting that thing of like, because the characters are so well defined.
Yeah, they are well defined.
Like Michelangelo, he's a party dude. And sometimes problems happen because he's too much of a party dude.
He's too much of a party dude.
He needs to learn to be more responsible. And, like Donatello is way too in his head sometimes. And, Raphael is quick to be angry and too impulsive. So I think, like, it might not be the inciting incident might be some bad guy just kind of shows up. But I think the escalation a lot of times has to do with their character flaws and the way
the core of the emotional core
characters interact with each other.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so let's finish this up. So episode ideas, like keep it short and sweet. What's the conflict? Keep it character focused. I think specifically for these animated comedy shows. You're not, because I usually do like 5 ideas. I think that's a good number, and we try to avoid doing ideas that are like, oh yeah, no, because this idea is actually about a tertiary character. It's a super fun episode. We're gonna have some time in the season, but try to keep them like, meat and potatoes, like your main characters. What are their conflicts? But like maybe you can do one that's more centered on a secondary character. I'd say like for pilot purposes specifically, but that's like a later concern. I know the executives don't like the episode where like the character doesn't act like the character. So try to avoiding those ideas where like, this character is, turns into an angry zombie for a day. And it's like, but you're not really, especially for the pilot, pilots are incredibly hard because they have to do so much work. That's why a lot of the pilots are not usually the best episode of the show.
No, they're not. Yeah.
But try to avoid things that are like, are the characters are super like, opposite day kind of thing episodes. But I usually do like one drawing per episode, just like a quick doodle to like just kind of like give you a little mood of what the episode is about. Don't try to cram too much text, like keep it like, 1-2 episodes per page at the most. And you don't need to do 10 episodes. You don't need to do like a full season of episodes.
Oh yeah, no.
Please.
Maximum of 5, I think.
Yeah, like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to chip in, Gene?
Yeah. Well, I think something that helps me visualize it. There's a few different techniques that I've built up, and a pitch Bible is, depending on how you look at it, one of two things. It's either a toolbox or like an instruction guide or something. It's like you're basically telling the executives how to build this show. And so, but you don't want to give too many tools. You want to limit it. And the episodes are a good way to use the tools you have to solve problems. And I've been guilty of this. I had to learn this where, it's like you said, don't add a character into an episode idea if they're not already established, because that just raises questions and it's just confusing. And you're not even getting you're not giving the executives the chance to get to know the characters you've already introduced. And so limit your tool set, keep it really tight, keep everything really, not small, but concise and contained. And I generally say, like you've had a good number of characters, and I think it's a good number to stick to. It's like a protagonist, if it's a protagonist-centric show, and then 2 secondary characters, and then a villain. You always want to have some kind of antagonist. You could have 2 protagonists if it feels like the dynamic between the 2 of them is the most important thing. For me, it's Zeus and Pibbles. They're both protagonists. You can't have one without the other. They're a dynamic duo. And in my pitch Bible, I had 2 side characters. They were just like Pibbles' friend and Pibbles' rival. And then I had some other tertiary characters that were even. It was just images and they're almost boiled down to tropes, because that just helps people fill in. If the idea itself is interesting enough, you can have some tropey, stereotypical sounding stuff if it just benefits the larger picture, because you're just using shorthand. You're using shortcuts to explain an idea, and that's fine. Hopefully your art is interesting enough that it's okay if a character is a little, I would pitch the rival and I was like, it's like Sasuke, from Naruto. It's just like if it was somebody that knew anime. If it wasn't, I would mention something else. And something I want to toss in. Is this the last page, or did you have more to say here?
I had one last page.
Go for it.
Oh. So yeah, after the episode ideas, the thing that I learned to do in every pitch is finishing it why it matters to me or to us or to whoever's doing the pitch. And this page serves you to explain how do you connect emotionally to the story? Why are you the right person to tell the story? And why are you the only person who can tell the story this way? So this is, I cannot stress how important I think this is.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're not just selling a show, you're selling yourself. And you're selling yourself as a creator. And the person who's, the best person to tell the story. And it doesn't need to be like I've done when I did Osvaldo, it was the whole thing was like, oh, it's based on my childhood growing up in Rio and being kind of a fish out of water in a town where, everyone was buff and really into jujitsu. And it doesn't need to be that one-to-one of it's a show about my childhood. It can be about an experience you had, or even the themes of the show are something you deeply care about, or the way the protagonist feels is the same way that you felt or you feel about yourself or about the world. It doesn't need to be oh, it's about my childhood. It can be, a super high fantasy show, but it still has subjects that you care about, and you are the right person to tell the story. Because I think, now more than ever, people want your unique point of view to be a part of that equation. And so it's been really important doing that, like, and finding, and it's good for your own sake as well, because you're finding, like, what's your connection point to the story? What is the story really about that it's important to me, and it allow me to tell a good story. And and it's also like, I don't know, I've done talks about pitches a few times, and there's always people who are like, I don't want to show my pitch to anybody because my pitch is so precious, and I put like a giant watermarks on everything and whatnot. And it's like, don't just show your idea to people. Like anyone can make a show about a kid and a dog, and the kid has a sword, but only Pendleton Ward could have created Adventure Time.
Yeah.
So what makes the show unique is you. It's not just the ingredients of the show. You are the special sauce, and ultimately you are, what you're trying to sell. It's yourself. And then end with a thank you, because you want to be polite, and people, executives, everybody want to work with nice people. Mm-hmm. So, show that you're not a jerk. No one wants to work with a jerk. And very important, put your contact at the end too. Like, if you have, yourself, your email, agent, manager, whatever, put it there. So yeah, that was my little fake.
Yeah,
awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
That was really good.
I'm gonna make your faces big again.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, if you stop sharing, there you
go. My perspective on that is it's incredibly similar. The only stuff I wanted to contribute is like you mentioned it a little bit, but like the actual presentation, especially now, it should be different. It's not the exact same thing that you're leaving behind, the PDF or whatever you're emailing. It's a PowerPoint. It's a presentation. It should be just big art. It should be hopefully landscape and not portrait. Stuff like that. I kind of try to weave a narrative through the presentation itself, and tell it almost like a story. I was referencing a lot of instruction booklets and games when I was putting together the Planet Panic pitch Bible, because somebody actually told me that the way when you're writing this is more for a show Bible, which is a little more in depth than a pitch, but I think it applies to a pitch too. You're creating instructions for how the executives are going to give you notes later, and when they said that helped me, it like clicked in my head. I was like, oh, it's not about what I want to do. I am creating a guide for what the show would be. And so then later, like everyone that's going to work on it will know, including the execs, they'll know what the show is supposed to be. But in the presentation, I would kind of try to weave this narrative. Like I would start with sort of who I am and my journey in life, and like try kind of plant these seeds that were going to pay off later, almost like in a script where it's like I would talk about how mentors are really valuable to me, and then as I'm revealing, it's like, here's Pibbles. I can't talk about the show, but it's like, this is Pibbles, and like this is why Pibbles is interesting, and then Zeus comes into the equation, and Zeus changed things. There's a lot of but then. You want to have a lot of buts. You want to have a lot of, that's how you create those conflicts and those contrasts, and it's like, Pibbles was a kid that blah, blah, blah. But then Zeus showed up, and then that. And so then you create this narrative within the presentation, and that keeps the executives engaged. And then it's like, oh, but then the villain showed up. Again, it's like Avatar. It's like, but then the Fire Kingdom attacked. And so even in the presentation, you want to try to kind of tell a story. It's like you're sitting around a fire and you're telling your, campfire stories. And then wind down, like, at the end with like, and this is why this is important to me. This is why this is blah, blah. So I think, and another thing I wanted to mention is like, it's good to, in my experience, it's been good to have, it's this plus this. So you want to explain your idea with things that already exist, to help the executives understand what you're going for. So in Planet Panic, without revealing too much, I guess, but it's like, it's Men in Black, but it's the Avengers. And you want to pick the most obvious stuff, because if you're going for deep cuts and referencing anime that like they're not going to know. I like avoid referencing anime in general, and it hurts. And it sucks because I want to, and depending on who I'm pitching to, I would bring it up. But that's why it helps to just kind of know who you're pitching to. Try to avoid it because it's too specific. But you know, if you boil down Planet Panic, it's Men in Black, which is Agent J and Agent K. This really like new recruit who is really like excitable, and that all comes through in the short. So I have no problem talking about that. It's this recruit who's really excitable, who doesn't understand the rules, and then a really jaded, like, I've been through it, you know, whatever. And then it's immediate conflict, but instead of aliens, it's superheroes, and they're fighting giant monsters and whatever. So that helps paint a picture, and that helps kind of it helps executives figure out what you're going for with the rest of it. It's like, okay, I see. I could reference My Hero Academia, and I have in the past, but I think that first of all, I came up with my idea before that manga even started, so I'm salty about that. But it's also very different. And when I explain, even to people who know what My Hero is, they immediately understand what the difference is, even if I mention it. They're like, "Yeah, I see the comparison, but I see what you're doing differently with it, and that's great." Because, like Pedro said, like it is that show, like Planet Panic and other shows I've done would not be the show they are without my voice. And Pedro's shows wouldn't be Pedro's shows without his voice. So I've seen people asking in the chat about copyrights and like protecting your works, and like do not worry about that. Like do not worry about it. You're shooting yourself in the foot before you've even started, because studios get so many pitches, they don't care about yours. That's just the harsh truth. You're starting at zero, they're not going to care about your pitch. So you're trying to get their attention, and you should hope that they'll pay attention to it, and they'll want to work with you and everything. And so like don't put more of a burden on it than you need to. Don't like you'll sign an NDA for their sake. Like they don't want to come off like they stole an idea either. That's bad for them too. So like when you pitch to studios, you'll generally sign an NDA and you pitch your ideas, and no one's going to steal your ideas. I've never really seen that happen. I've heard some stories, but I question their validity, and like, I don't know, maybe you have a different take on that, Pedro.
No, I'm never worried with copyrights a day in my life. I think that's just no one does. Like, you know, like don't worry, like, you know, like Craig McCracken pitches shows without worrying about copyright. I think you guys would be okay.
I wouldn't even take it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah,
no, just like no one's gonna steal your idea. You like Gene said, you sign an NDA. You know, that's how the industry works. Like you don't need to run to the Library of Congress or whatever you guys do copyrights in the States and like register your show or something. There's zero need to do that. If you want to post, you know, your shows aren't online, go ahead and post it. Maybe someone will see it and be cool. And you know, you catch.
I was gonna say, I would take it a step further and put everything, like, you know, maybe not the entire, maybe don't reveal stuff that you don't want to reveal, but like my Planet Panic existed as a webcomic for a long time. And in fact, but I've been pitching it, I've been putting stuff online for it since like 2008. That's when I first came up with the idea, and a lot of that stuff is still around. I've either hidden or deleted a lot of it because, you know, I want to keep it a secret now, but it hasn't been a secret up till now, until recently, and maybe until the short came out. And I think, like Pedro said, the best way to have people see it is if you put it out there and show fan art, whatever. Like that stuff's great. I've been pitching Planet Panic to different studios since Nick passed on it, and like the sheer amount of fan art that it's gotten in the last couple of years has been so important. And even the comic I did before is so important. It's like just the more you can show that's like this works, like I promise you this works, it helps. And it's still a gamble and it's still a lottery, but you're trying to give your idea the best chance it can. So definitely don't be afraid of posting your characters, your OCs or your, you know, whatever. Do comics, do animated shorts if you know how to animate. Do whatever you can to show off why this idea works, and who knows? People might like it enough that you don't need to pitch it to a studio. Maybe you could just self-fund it. Wouldn't that be nice?
Can I say one thing that kind of goes a little against what you just said?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Which is because I've heard that question from a lot of people, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, do I need to animate my show to pitch it? And
Yes.
it's
I
like,
know what you're gonna say.
no, you don't need to animate your show.
No.
Like my entire life I've pitched it with like a PDF document with, characters. I barely have any background art because I suck at drawing backgrounds. And I think, here's the rule of thumb, I think. The chance of you producing a fully animated thing at home by yourself that's gonna look as good or better than the actual show that you want to make is usually really slim. Because when you make a show, you have a crew, you have a budget, you have all this stuff. So it's best to leave things to the imagination than show a finished product that's subpar than your show could be. So letting them imagine the best version of your show is better than showing them something that is not as good as the potential that your show has. If you have the talents and the means to do something that's amazing, go ahead. I think it's awesome. I think I've seen the comics that Gene has put out, and they're amazing. They look like the show.
Thank you.
It's really cool. But it's not a necessity. And I think if you end up making something that's kind of questionable, it's best to leave it to the imagination because it's much more powerful what they can imagine your show could be rather than.
I agree with that.
It's a lot of work to throw out.
It's a lot. I think, don't do too much. Don't do a pilot. I made that mistake fresh out of college where I did a full 20-minute animatic for an old version of Planet Panic, and I was a fool because it was like, I'm gonna have a pilot, I'm gonna show it around, and it was wasted effort. It was still important to do because I got better at storyboarding and all this other stuff, directing. I was working with some friends on it, but it was ultimately wasted effort. And I think what I was saying, I agree with you, and I think people have pitched on Post-its. It's true. It's just whatever helps sell the idea, and sometimes that's all you need. In my experience, I think just use all of your skills to the best of your ability, and take whatever advantage you can have. With Centaur World, Megan can sing really well. She's just trained in choir singing, and so she would sing through her pitches to show that this is a musical, and stuff like that. In my case, I came from the world of animation, and so that was a good way for me to kind of put myself above other people who might be pitching similar stuff. It's look at this thing in motion, because I think that's where it really works. It's not. I don't think I would have been able to even get the short made if I hadn't done those animated comics. And it was a lot of work. It was a shitload of work. It was I was doing one a week, and I was working full time, and I would just come home from work. I would sometimes work on it during work, but I was lucky that I could. And then I would spend an entire weekend just finishing it out, posting it on Mondays. And it was a lot, but it was effort that I really wanted to put in because I wanted somebody to notice, and somebody did. And so maybe I got lucky, but I think it just helps to put yourself out there. And that kind of comes back to a bigger issue with portfolios and stuff. But you want to be putting your ideas out there into the world.
I think that is a good point to circle back to some questions we've been getting in chat.
There's tons of questions. I would love to answer as many as we could.
Yeah. Questions.
I think a lot of people in chat are asking, so say you have this pitch, you listen to this talk, you have a great pitch, but you're not in animation right now, or some are asking they're not maybe in the United States or specifically LA. How would you suggest getting your pitch just out there or in front of eyes of studios or executives or anybody?
I think we'll have different answers, so that's good.
Yeah. I mean, my answer is, that it's just maybe it's not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, but it just takes time. It's I think the best way to do it is to start working in animation. It doesn't need to be in the States, doesn't need to be in LA. work in animation, learn how animation works, learn how the studios work, and get the experience that's and in that during those years you also get the contacts and all that stuff that are necessary for you to pitch your idea. I think it takes years. Like I'm here right now, but it took me like 13 years to get, like, I got to LA a year and a half ago. It took me like 12 years to get to LA from Brazil. So it takes time. It takes like working in industry, I think. And I think like the chances, if you're someone who is already involved in the industry and knows how animation works, you not only going to make your pitch better because you now know the ins and outs of it, but you also have more of the trust of the people who are spending a lot of money to make your show happen. So other than that, there are contests and stuff, and I know Pixelatl does pitch contests for Latinos and Latinas artists. There's the Nick Shorts, which is where Gene did Planet Panic, and I did Monster Pack back when it was called Monster Pack. So keep an eye out for maybe those pitch sessions, and like places like Kidscreen or Midcom are these festivals that do these pitch rounds where you can go and pitch executives and whatnot. So it's you can still get lucky, and like it happens to some people, and I'm not saying it won't happen to you. I hope it does, that you have a really amazing project that just kind of happens, but usually it happens to people who have been working in the industry and kind of take the long way there, which is usually the way that works.
Yeah, I had been doing my own stuff before I came to LA, like just trying to make it happen. I flew down here a couple of times just to make connections, meet people, pitch. I once flew down from San Francisco I was living there for a couple of years, and I flew down to LA just for a pitch, and then like hung out with some friends, and then flew back. And they even told me like, you didn't have to do this. I was like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I think FaceTime is important if you can. But again, now everything's remote, so you're more likely to make those connections. It's easier. But I think the unfortunate reality is that it helps to not just be in LA, but it helps to be in the industry, because when there's that much money that's going to be put into a project, they want to be sure that you'll be able to do it. And that ties into some other questions I think I've seen, which is like, is it possible to be a showrunner? Are you always guaranteed to be a showrunner on your show? No. And I know that, Pedro, you can talk about that as well. But I think that it depends on your level of experience, because you can sell an idea, but if they don't think you're going to be able to do it, they're going to put people in charge to run it, and you might lose control over the idea. And so it's actually just the smarter idea to try to get the experience, to try to work up the ladder to some degree, to have experience with storyboarding, with other things. So you can say, I've worked in the industry, I know I can do this, I can show you that I can do this. And depending on the studio, they don't always give you an executive producer title, which is the highest title you can. Like Nickelodeon does not like giving EP titles to first-time showrunners. So even on Panic, with the contract I had, I was a co-EP. There was nobody above me, but just how it is. And so yeah, I think it's good to just build up the experience for the sake of the show, for your show, more than anything, because it's really, really hard to make a cartoon. It's really hard to make a cartoon with a team of people. And so if nothing else, for your own idea's sake, for the sake of the health of your team and everything, you want to have that experience. It'll just make the end result better. So baby steps,
Yeah, and there are no guarantees that you'll be the showrunners of your show. Like if you have no experience, chances are you won't, because it's a lot of money that's being put into the show, and it's bad for it's bad for the crew, it's bad for everyone in the process. So we want to of course at some point you're gonna be, at some point you gotta be showrunner for the first time, but it might not be on your first show if you're very unexperienced. But don't use that as like, don't get angry at it. Use it as a learning experience, as a stepping stone for your next thing. And also for people, there's no official role that's called showrunner. So like Gene said, you're an EP or a co-EP. So there's no like credit that says like showrunner.
It's kind of funny that happens. Yeah, you could. But everyone always refers to that, but it's usually either EP or co-EP. So that's the official name of that. Yeah,
and I'll add that, like, not only takes time and experience to be a showrunner and to be a competent EP and make sure that everyone's taken care of, because a lot of people involved. It also takes time for you to also develop the skills of putting a good pitch together. So the thing I'll say to a lot of people who are like doing this for the first time is like, do your pitch, put yourself in it, make sure it's a great pitch. And after you're done with your pitch, put it away and start another pitch.
Yeah.
And then do another pitch and then do a fourth pitch. And after you've done your fourth pitch, go back to your first pitch and look at it with fresh eyes and rework that first pitch so it's better. And then do that to your second pitch, and then come up with a fifth pitch, and then go back to your third pitch. Just keep doing, because it's like any skill. It's like playing the piano. The first time you sit down to do it, it's probably not going to be great. Maybe you're a prodigy, and I don't know who's watching this, but chances are it's not going to be the best pitch. So do a bunch. It's a great exercise. It's fun. If you're having fun doing it, then you're doing it right. And just exercise those muscles. So, in a couple of years, like, you're gonna see, like, I've looked at my first two pitches I've ever done, kind of fresh out of Vancouver Film School, and they're terrible. And no one picked them up, of course, because they were terrible. They were so bad, and I'm glad they didn't turn into shows, because it'd be terrible shows. They're really undercooked and everything, but you get better. You find the things that work for you. You find your formula. So just keep practicing. I've seen, like, it's really kind of concerning to see sometimes, like, this person who's been for 20 years, they have this one idea that they haven't changed a thing, and they're like, this is the greatest idea in the world. No one sees it but me. And the world is at fault, and I'm a genius, and it's like, it's probably the idea. Develop. It's not that it can't be a good idea, but you got to have a critical eye and develop it more, and do different ones, and get practice and stuff. Don't just get super ultra attached to that one thing.
Something that I think helps me in pitching and coming up with ideas, something that's helped me over the years is thinking of the audience first and not what I want to do, because you're hoping to reach an audience, and I think if you start thinking of how will people who have never seen the show experience it, and what will they think, that helps. And it seems obvious, but I think we get stuck in our heads a lot with our ideas. And when we get so close to them because they're existing in our heads and we're so used to them, and we have all these ideas for where it's going to go, you forget that when somebody's looking at it for the first time, be it an executive, be it somebody when it's on TV, when it's even just a friend you're showing it to, it's really good to show it to friends. And you'll get feedback. And that's super, super important, is audience perception. And that'll also help you if you can kind of separate yourself from what you're doing, have an out-of-body experience, and look at it like, how would somebody see this for the first time? That can really help, because if you're looking at it and you feel like stuff is explained or stuff is not explained that might help somebody understand the show, that would help. But showing it to friends is really good, and not just friends who are like animation savvy. Show it to like your aunt, show it to people who like will have never seen a cartoon before, and see what they say. And if they have notes, don't dismiss it as like, well, they don't know cartoons. Yeah, but like everyone understands SpongeBob. Everyone understands, Teenage Mutant. Like everyone understands shows when they see them laid out, and there's a reason. It's because they're easy to get.
Yeah.
So.
And if 3 people give you the same note, then you have a problem.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, sometimes people are wrong, and sometimes it's not every note's going to be valid, but it definitely is valid if more than one person has said it.
Yeah, so a lot of people in the chat were having a discussion, I think, about like the text versus no text thing, and I think like a couple of people can get like the difference is like there's a written document that you want to have text. It's like a self-sufficient document that it doesn't need you to explain the show. They can just read it like a book and be like, okay, that's the show. That's the pitch Bible. But then there's a different like presentation that you do live when you're telling the story, you're having a conversation, and you're showing images just to walk them through your show. And for that one, that's what we're saying, like just like as minimal text as possible, because you don't want people reading, you want people listening to you and looking at pictures and stuff.
Somebody said that they mentioned like the Stranger Things pitch that had a lot of text, and live action's different. Like, and I think with live action you can't have a lot of art. They can have mood stuff. They can have like a Pinterest board essentially of what the show's gonna be like. But I've seen live action stuff and it's more in depth. And animation is a visual. It's it's cartoons, so you should try to explain as much as you can with visuals.
And you're always going to find some example that's the exact opposite of what we're saying right now. But
do whatever you want, honestly. Like, don't listen to us. I don't care. Maybe you'll have a Bible and like the executives be like, "Wow, I read the whole thing over the weekend. It was amazing." And like, forget what Pedro and Gene said. But I think that like imagine you're working executive job and you're reading pitch Bibles and listening to meetings for 8-9 hours. You're going to want to just understand an idea at a glance. You're going to want to hear a pitch and understand it within the first 10 seconds. That's the biggest secret, is everyone knows whether or not they're going to like something within the first like 10 seconds. And that like sucks, but you can kind of feel it. And I don't know if there's anything that you can really do. You can just prepare yourself as best as you can and come out swinging. But like I've definitely seen pitches from people and I'm like, oh, I see where this is going to go. And there's nothing you can do. People have preconceived notions about things, and they're gonna they might be in a bad mood that day, and what can you do? It's a lottery.
Yeah, it's always a little bit of luck.
People in chat are asking, what do you do if you don't know how to draw? Do you guys have suggestions for making a pitch with that? If you're primarily a writer, but you're interested in animation.
I've seen pitches from good fellow writers who, didn't know how to draw, and they just found like reference images and like pictures and stuff. And you can illustrate it like, in a way without drawings. I'll say that the honest answer is that it is harder for an animation pitch.
Way harder.
For you to sell without drawings, because like drawings are kind of half the thing in animation. So it is harder. It's a harder climb. So if you have a friend who draws and you want to like collaborate with them and co-create the show, you're not going to get your friend to draw for free for you, because you don't do that. You either like co-create the show with them or you pay them to draw your things. But yeah, that really improves your chances, and that's kind of the hard truth of it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I have my friend Kira Presley is an amazing writer, and like she's done a ton of pitch Bibles, and she either hires artists that she knows, or I've seen some of her pitch Bibles where it's just like you said, it's like examples of other things that sort of just like show what it would look like. Same as I was saying about the Stranger Things thing. It's like you just want to kind of try to give like a Pinterest mood board of like what this show would be like, but it is going to be harder. It is definitely even more of a challenge.
I'm getting a question that's, what is it possible to pitch a cartoon, film, OVA, similar to like Over the Garden Wall, instead of a series? Is that like a different way to pitch
good
that?
question.
Or do you guys have any experience or know of any pitches
I mean,
for that kind of stuff?
I've pitched shows with more continuity, I guess is the closest, and I've seen like feature pitches and stuff. But it's possible. Like it's just, I think it works quite only like if you're doing a feature or a mini series, you're probably not doing like definitely not a feature, not doing episodes breakdown, but you are like having like kind of an outline of the film. But it's kind of similar. You're thinking of characters. You want strong characters. You want like really fun visuals, but then you're spending more time talking about that arc. Maybe you're breaking the arc of a character, or you are just doing like a big chunk of text explaining the movie, which is I don't know, kind of will be a good way around just not having like a wall of text. But maybe these are more text heavy.
Yeah, I think it happens, but all the examples I can I don't think executives are against it, but I think usually those are people who are insiders that like Over the Garden Wall or whatever. Like it's people who have already proven themselves to be effective showrunners or directors or something, and so. But even Over the Garden Wall, I think it was supposed to be a movie originally, and then it kind of became a miniseries. So it's a little tougher, and I think part of that is because when a studio is putting in the money and the effort to greenlight something, they want to make sure they're getting their money back, and a longer running series has more likelihood of getting the money back, and also it's easier to market. It's a question of money. Like it ultimately I think just comes down to that. So it's a little bit of a tougher choice for them. That's why like seasonal things I think might do a little better when it comes to miniseries or like a straight to TV movie, because something like Over the Garden Wall, they can air it over Halloween, and so that helps. But if it's just like a self-contained story, if it's 6 episodes, I think it's just going to be tough for them to be like, okay, but what do we do with this? I think Netflix is more open to that for sure, though. Streaming stuff is more open to miniseries. They kind of love them, I think. So that's
but like a limited series that just ends after 10 episodes. Like how many shows have existed since Over the Garden Wall that have the same structure as Over the Garden Wall? And yet I always hear people like, I want to do a show like Over the Garden Wall. It's like, because it's a great show and I get it, but that was an anomaly. That was like,
it was weird.
It's hard, which also mentioning like a lot of people tend to like see what's happening in animation and try to chase a trend.
Yeah.
And don't try to do that because your show's gonna hit the air. If everything goes perfectly right on your pitch, your show's gonna be on the air in 3 years. So by the time your show's on the air, that trend is long gone. So and what the networks are looking for changes every couple of months. As executives change and each one comes with a different idea of what the network is headed and blah blah blah. So don't try to chase anything. Do something you believe. Do something that's a good story that that you put your heart into it, and don't think about like, oh, I'm gonna do something. So because right now I can tell that workplace comedy for kids are trendy. So forget about that.
Yeah, you're already falling behind, and I think it's just good to hold on to your idea, have a strong idea, and just keep pursuing it, because the timing might not work out right now, but it might work out in a few years, and things are cyclical too. And so what Pedro said, don't chase trends. That's a really good point.
And that's a good thing also about circling back to like doing multiple pitches and having that drawer of ideas that it's like you never know. Sometimes you're like, you go on a meeting with an executive and they're like, oh, we're actually looking for, like sitcom kind of comedies. And they're like, oh, wait a second, I got one right here. What do you think of this one? When me and Mark pitched Disney in 2019, it was like Mark went over for a meeting at Disney. The executive had just watched Cupcake and Dino over the weekend with her daughter, and her daughter loved it. And she was like, because he was there for just like, I don't know, I'm going to look for a writing job. And she was like, "Oh my God, you were the story editor in Cupcake and Dino. I love that show. My kid loves it, and we're looking for comedies. That's the kind of thing we want, like comedies with big heart. Do you have anything?" And it was like, "I sure do." And he called me from the parking lot, and it was like, "Okay, we gotta come up with some shows for Disney." And we are already kind of working together on a few ideas. And so, it took us like 2 months to take 5 ideas to them, and they bought all 5 ideas, which was insane. And
That's
so
awesome.
they exploded our heads.
Yeah, that's great.
Pedro, someone asked a while back earlier, just if you could quickly talk about just like a beat board almost, like what happens between, okay, wow, my pitch got greenlit, to actually, okay, the show's premiering, like from greenlight to like production, like what are like the little steps in between all of that?
Right. Well, between the pitch being greenlit and pitching, there is a huge. It's where I am stuck for. I've been stuck for 2 years. Is in that unsaid chunk of space there, where it's like, yeah, my pitch got picked up. Does not mean it's been greenlit. I mean, there's few shows that get like greenlit on pitch, but it's super rare. But you pitch a show, and then you go into development, and development can last like 1.5, 2 years. And in development, you're fleshing out everything. You are addressing notes. You're making sure it fits the narrative of the network, and you are coming up with episodes. You're hiring people to write stuff and to do like concept art. So that is a long process, and it's I know if you're not from the industry, it seems like insanely long, but it is a time where your show gets to mature. As much as painful as it is to wait, it does give your show some time to like find out what really works and what doesn't work, and kind of drown those babies that are bad babies.
Drown the bad babies.
The bad babies.
So, and it's also like a lot of like, it's great practice if you ever want to be an EP or showrunner, because part of the job, I would say like almost like 90% of the job is addressing notes and not being a child about it, and being professional and respectful, and like understanding sometimes what the note actually means, and what's been bugging the executives. Sometimes it's not what they say, but it's something else.
The note behind the note.
Yeah, the note behind the note. And then it's like, let's say you love, option A for your story, but they're like, "Oh, no, we love option B." Your job is not to say, "Your option B sucks, like screw you, I'm doing my option A." Your job is to find option C, which is the place where you're still happy with your show and you love it, and it still retains everything you love about the show, but also addresses whatever concerns they have. So that's kind of most of the work. So after development, your show gets greenlit, goes into production, then you staff the show. And I've never worked on, none of my shows have been board driven, they've all been script driven. So we usually start with the writer's room and staffing up all the writers and dividing the scripts, and they'll go and write the scripts, and we'll cast the show and record the voices, and then we'll staff the board team, and we'll have our recordings already kind of put together, not to the timing of the episode, but roughly where we wanted, and extra takes and improv. We had a lot of improv in Talkin Dino. And then, it's like shows get boarded, and then the animatics get put together, and then the animators animate, and the background artists draw the backgrounds, and character designers draw the special poses and the characters and all that stuff.
It takes a village.
Yeah,
It
and all
really
these people are
A lot.
and you have to make sure that everyone's supported, that you let them. What I would look to do on Cupcake and Dino was like allowing the team to bring themselves into it, and to put all their creativity and all their amazing POVs, and coming up with stuff that I couldn't come up in 1,000 years, but also being very clear with your direction. So you are, you you don't leave anyone hanging. You know, you want to make sure that the direction that you're giving is clear. It's like, okay, we understand what the show is, and you're leading them in the right path. Because the last thing you want is like have someone like waste a whole week of work because you were a bad director. But in the case of Cupcake and Dino, I was an EP, but I also directed all 52 episodes, which I don't recommend to anyone. And
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and then you put the show out, and Netflix puts 2 seasons out and then cancels it. Woo! Then you're on to the next thing.
That's a good segue for a previous question for both of you. I think someone asked, how do you go into a pitch knowing it could possibly get canceled further on, or just that's a possibility?
Don't worry about that.
It's basically
You can't-
short answer for that.
I saw that too. Yeah, you can't worry about it, and like if you're worried about failing, you should not even try. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be miserable. Like I want to make that very clear. Like development is gonna be brutal, and I think we couldn't not do it, and that's why we're still at it, because we really want to tell these stories. And I definitely I can't imagine a life where I'm not pitching and trying to get a show made. And it's been really, really hard at times, like, you know, just like peel myself off the floor, like depressed. And because you're pouring yourself into your work. They ask you to, but you want to. You want to make the show a representation of you, and you want to make it great, and all the things we've been describing. And then ultimately it's hard when they say, no, we're not interested, because it feels like it's an attack on you. And so there's some really, really low points. But you know, I can't stop. I dust myself off. I give myself time to grieve and recover, and I just get back into it.
Yeah.
So
there's a good place to exist where you're like, you love your shows and they're important to you, but at the same time, you're aware that this is like this weird cross section of commerce and art where, you know, like you can always do your art for art's sake and put it on YouTube, put it on your Tumblr. I don't know, do anyone still use Tumblr? But you know, if you're doing shows for networks, it is that's where they live. That's like, you know, it's this place where commerce meets art, and it costs millions of dollars to make a show, and that's the price of, like, you know, like, unless you have millions of dollars in your pocket just kind of to spend on making your own show, that's the deal that you sign on to. Like, you know, you're gonna give up 92.5% of your show, and as far as copyrights and stuff goes, and ownership, and it's but you get to make a show. Will you get to make a show for 5 seasons, for 1 season? I don't know. There's so many variables there, but I say enjoy the ride, learn as much as you can in the process. If you get knocked down, get up again, just like the song.
You're never gonna keep me down.
Exactly. And just keep on going. It sucks. Sometimes it sucks. It sucks. Being canceled sucks. Getting a pitch rejected sucks. But rejection is like an integral part of this job. It's impossible to avoid rejection.
That you talking about budget a little bit could segue into another question. And I don't think I've ever had to do this when pitching. Do you have to include like a estimated budget for a cartoon? No. Yeah.
No, that's not your problem.
Somebody else asked Nora. Hi, Nora. If you need an agent, not in my experience, maybe some places. I don't think so, though. I
only got a manager after I was making Cupcake and that. So
I don't have a manager.
When I did, go ahead. No,
go ahead.
No, when I was pitching to DreamWorks on the sheet, it was like, oh, if it goes through, then they would need like a lawyer or an agent together with you. But that was specifically DreamWorks.
Oh, I see. Lawyer is very good to have for negotiations, obviously. But I've never had an agent. I don't have a manager. I'm just lucky to have connections and like, and again, it's the industry experience thing, because I've just been through it. I've been doing this for 6 years in LA, and so like I just know people. And so I've been able to pitch everywhere without an agent, but it probably, I have friends who have agents and they love it. It like helps them not worry about certain things.
Yeah, I enjoy having a manager and an agent, but it was something that, I only got after I was already working in Cupcake and Dino, and I was not in LA, so for me it helped a lot, to make this transition into here and setting up meetings and stuff. So if you think it helps you, that's a good thing to have. It's if you get an offer for an agent, like it might be a good idea too.
Yeah, I saw somebody. Oh, go ahead.
I was like, because they don't get paid if you get paid. So.
Yeah, that's true. There's incentive there. Lauren said Netflix only accepts agent pitches. I don't think that's true because I pitched Netflix a lot. Yeah. You just have to know people, and that's tough. But and I think I've seen questions about it before too. It's like, how do you get in? How do you pitch to these places? And that's tough because it's hard when you're a complete stranger. They have so much time and only so much time in their schedules, and so it's really hard to get in, and they have to trust you to some degree. So again, it just helps to be in the industry already and know these people, but they're not against pitching to people from outside the industry or outside LA for sure. But it's tough. It's tough because how are you going to reach them? How are they going to know you're not a crazy person? Like there's all these different factors, and so again, I guess an agent would help with that if you can find one. But I don't think there's any hard rules about anything. Like if you're not in LA, we're not going to take your pitch, or if you don't have an agent, we're not going to take so.
Hey, and you do not have to make a show in LA. There are great shows being made in Brazil by some good friends. There are great shows being made all over Latin America and Europe and Asia, and it doesn't make your show any worse, any less valid. Maybe it makes your show a little cheaper if in the case of Brazil, because the budgets there are substantially smaller than the budgets here in LA. But just make a show and put out, because now with the Netflixes of the world and whatever, your show could be Cupcake and Dino was not a show made in the U.S. It was a Brazilian Canadian co-production, and it was on 100 and whatever countries that Netflix is in, and it was translated into 20 different languages, and it was enough of a calling card for me to come here and be hired by Disney. So just take a chance. The industry does not limit to LA, and if you get to make a show somewhere else, just give your best, make a damn good show.
That's like Bluey, that preschool show that was in Australia, and now it's all over on Disney. I think Disney picked it up and everything.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, Ewan, who produced Cupcake and Dino, also makes Peppa Pig, which is a British show everywhere, or PJ Masks, who just made in France.
Miraculous is French.
Yeah,
that's huge.
I was gonna say Has Been Hotel, and I don't know if you've heard of the webcomic Lore Olympus on Webtoon. Those are both, Has Been Hotel is a YouTube indie animated project, and now
independent.
That's picked up by A24, and Lore Olympus was an indie comic, and that got so popular that it got picked up for an animated series. So that could possibly be a route, instead of the traditional pitch, kind of like Gene's Comic Planet Panic, just start posting stuff and putting it out there. And everybody's looking at Instagram and Twitter now. It's such a special time right now that you could just put your idea out there and anybody could see it. You don't recruiters and executives are on social media now more than ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they're looking.
And even if you make a small local show, you get the experience, you get the sometimes no one here in LA gives a crap that I made Osvaldo in Brazil because it was a local show. But
Okay.
I just learned so much doing it. It was so fun, and it's like such an integral part of my experience that like Osvaldo is like the show that I have the most like I put myself the most into, and like it's my spirit animal. But and I wouldn't have done any other way. Like it was a great experience, and it's always a stepping stone.
Awesome. I think we got through most of the questions. How are you guys feeling? Like 5 more minutes and then
I could
some closing statements.
There's been so many questions. I'm so sorry, guys. I want to answer all of these, but there's a lot. Yeah, I think I need to eat dinner. But I will. My closing statement is you gotta do the work. You gotta do the work, and you gotta fight hard, because if your goal is to have a show, you really have to work at it. It is a lottery. It is people have had amazing show ideas and they've been passed on. People have had not so great ideas and they've been greenlit. and I'm not naming any names.
No, that's for after.
But it happens. And timing is everything. It's who you know. It's being smart. And that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but you're going to have a lot of situations where you have to make decisions and you have to address notes. You have to, there's a lot of politics at play when you get to a certain point. But when you're just pitching, you just have to do the work. You have to put stuff out there. You have to, somebody asked at one point, like, how do they, is it possible for them to find you? It happened to me. Like, I was doing animated comic and Phil Rinda found my comic somehow. And it helps that I knew people. I was doing conventions a lot, and so, for a while. And so I knew people who knew him. And like, I was going to San Diego Comic-Con every year for like 6 years in a row. Like, I was hustling, I was networking, I was doing, even before I was working in LA, I was doing stuff all the time. This has been a goal of mine forever. Like, for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to have a show, and that's been my focus. And along the way, everything else I've done has just been kind of trying to reach that. And that's not to say that you should abandon everything else. Live your life, please. Live your life, and that'll also help your storytelling. Just experiencing the things that life can provide. But it is tough. It is tough, and there's a lot of challenges, a lot of stuff that we can't predict, a lot of stuff that we might not have had to deal with, and then stuff that we've had to deal with you might not have to deal with. So yeah, just keep working at it. Keep your ideas simple, and if you ever have a question, feel free to tweet at me, and I'll answer. I'm happy to help.
No, nice.
Yeah, that was a great summation. I think the best quality you could have is patience. And just
That's very true.
I was some dude in Brazil who dreamt of the industry here, and was obsessed with all the shows that came from here, and just like Gene is like all I could think of for a while was like, I wanna make my own show. I wanna do something that I create, but it wasn't like I locked myself in a room and just kept obsessing about it. It was just over the years, and meanwhile I was working. I was honing my skills and animating and working on commercials and music videos and whatever, because I worked on back then was a really small studio, did not do shows. But I kind of got informed, and even being in Brazil, I was like, okay, what are the conventions I can go to, and where are the places I can go to meet people? So with Cupcake and Dino, we went to this, it was like a local MIPCOM kind of thing that happened in Rio called Rio Content Market, and that's how I met E1 in Canada, and that's where I pitched them Cupcake and Dino.
Okay.
So, and it still took years for it to happen, but there is a way, and you gotta be patient and just work every day a little bit to be a better professional. Also never forget that you want to be a nice person and you want to be a professional that people want to work with, that people want to see succeed. And yeah, I mean, if you're watching this and you're in LA or in the States, you already have a huge advantage over everybody else in the world. So yeah, just keep at it and yeah, just keep. Also, one thing I'll always say to people who are mostly visual people is, if you study even a little bit about screenwriting, you're already like so far ahead of everybody. Because it's a thing that a lot of people who are very visual and like to draw don't really get into. So read some storytelling books or some screenwriting books, and that is already like a big advantage.
Yeah, and just like I said earlier, like you really want to try not to let other animated things be the only influence on your work. Because I think it becomes a weird echo chamber after a while, where it's like just regurgitating a lot of the same ideas. You want to read books, you want to go out and travel and see the world if you can. Like, you try to like do as much as you can so that you're bringing something new into the medium as well. And then now that'll usually stand out in pitches. Like, executives can pick up on unique life experiences, and so like, I sometimes wish I did more living, I guess, in my 20s, because I would have more like unique ideas. I'm catching up on it now. 30s have been interesting for me, but it's people make their priorities, and so I get it. But I think just you are, this is gonna be sappy, but you are a unique person and your stories are unique, and so like that's what you should always kind of focus on, is what makes your story unique.
And sometimes the thing that makes your path harder, it's also the thing that makes your voice different and special. So
absolutely,
it's lean on that. That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, really well said, you guys. That's a great point to end on. And people
Katie.
people are asking in the chat. This is going to be up for 24 hours, I believe. So yeah,
we're keeping it on for 24 hours for people for different time zones and stuff, and then it will explode.
Yeah.
So
in 24 hours, this will explode.
Screenshot stuff, I guess. That's gonna give me a little tip. But yeah, thank you so much, Pedro and Jean, and thank you for everybody in chat for joining us. And yeah, good luck.
Thanks, Katie, for moderating. You've done a great job.
Yeah, thank you for being patient.
Troubleshooting
with tech.
Oh, you pulled it out. You MacGyvered
it. Thank you so much, Katie. You were amazing.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you. Special shout out to all I saw a bunch of Brazilians in the chat. So, obrigado a todos vocês que vieram assistir.
Thanks. Seeing lots of pals too. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Hope it helped. Yeah. Thanks, Pedro, for including me too. I kind of imposed myself on this when Pedro brought it up.
No, you didn't impose yourself.
I was like, I want to do this shit with you.
No, I jumped at it. I was like, oh yeah, perfect, love it.
I think you had. I loved your presentation. I think you had a really cool example pitch. I wanna work on that show. Next step is we're gonna pitch that show.
All right, let's do it.
I know. I was really like watching that. I was like, I could see this definitely as a show.
See this as a show.
Nickelodeon.
Keep an eye out, everybody. There's Super Normal Working Turtle.
Super Normal Working Turtle. It's just
going straight to Nicktoons.
Rolls off the tongue so well.
Cool. Well, have a great night, everybody, and thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.